It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 4 live stream for the Players Championship. Gonna get you guys ready for all of your exposure tomorrow, both from the betting and over there on the prop side of things, whether it's Underdog or Prize Picks props, or over there with some 3-balls or matchup bets that you guys might want to deep dive. Feel free to go ahead, hit me with those questions down there in chat. If you don't have any questions quite yet, still feel free to go ahead and say hi as you guys file on in here. Also, smash that like button if you guys haven't already. And let's get ready to round off this week with hopefully a day into the profit. It's been a little bit of a slow week, at least on the prop side for me this week. Showdown has been a lot better over there for DFS. So at least that's been able to make up or at least catch up for some of that slack. On the prop side of things, we've got some revenge to go out there and exact. So let's go out there, get after all of our exposure for tomorrow. It looks like we got Chris down there in chat. We'll talk about your question here in just a second. We got Joseph down there as well, who says this weekend has been gnarly. And I think that's a perfect word for it. Absolutely terrible weather out here for these players. And that is only going to continue out there tomorrow. And also, you're saying to get some grapefruit for that Tito's, a proper Greyhound. Sounds like something I might have to have at dinner, which speaking of, we're going to have to keep this to a 30-minute live stream here. So anything you guys want me to deep dive, feel free to go ahead and fire on it whenever you guys feel comfortable. Because when we get to that 30 minutes, I've got to head to this dinner reservation. So we'll keep it quick, concise, to the point out here for you guys. We got Chris. So with the question about JJ Spawn, ownership going to be really high out there on JJ. So, a reversion to the mean I don't think is out of the cards, especially for a player of his level. In Showdown, if you're looking to get different in that range, down there in that 7K range, that's a strategy that you can for sure take. And, outside of like the 8-9K range, or you've got some chalk there that you could possibly avoid. The issue with avoiding some 8-9K chalk is that the guys around them still have some ownership, right? They're all still going to be like 5 to maybe 8% owned at the very least. Down there in that 7K range, you've got some guys around a JJ Spawn that are like 1-2% owned. So great DFS question, Chris. Hopefully answers it out there for you. But yeah, it's definitely a viable strategy. What's going on? Steven says, let's go. Hope I'm feeling well, Luke. Busy weekend. For sure busy. I'm going to be exhausted after tomorrow, but it's a good exhausted, right? Out here doing a whole bunch, having a whole lot of fun, so can't complain about it. And said, any thoughts on Akshay at 18-1? 18-1 seems like a pretty decent number. Now, I'm not sure that's enough to make me bite over there for tomorrow. You have to think he's going to have a better day over there for Sunday. In fact, his ball striking stats really weren't even that terrible over there for round number 3. It was mostly the short game that let him down today. So I don't think that's a terrible bet, but maybe not my favorite. He said, how likely do we think it'll be a delay tomorrow? And by the way, J-Habs, I apologize for what I said to you yesterday. So hopefully we can both say the same thing there. He said, how do we think it'll be for a delay? I think it's like a 30% chance, I'd say, because they're going off at 10. So you'd think a 5-hour pace would be about as slow as they possibly go. So if they start at 10, it's a 5-hour pace. They end around 3 p.m. So that's right when the showers are supposed to come through. So I would say they should get it done ahead of time. If they have a playoff, that would make the chances of a delay a little bit higher. But to go to this weather over here and show it to you, I mean, it's some nasty stuff that they have coming around 4 or 5. So, a delay, I think, is really the only scenario where you see a sort of delay. And if it's a delay at that point, they're probably pushing it over there to Monday. So let's all hope that that doesn't happen just for the sake of the logistics here, right? No one wants to have a delayed event right over there to Monday, but I wouldn't say it's a very high chance. And you said all good? Cool. Then we're all good too, man. Kim says, thoughts on Davis Riley? So I'd say Davis Riley is going to be pretty chalky, right? You're going to see quite a bit of ownership over there in Davis. But actually, I take that back. I think I'm thinking of the wrong player there. Let me bring up the shots gained metrics so we can take a better look over there at Davis, which, by the way, 1 second. Let me get to the right tab so we can actually bring up the stats. I mean, he was playing with Justin Thomas today. I mean, he looked okay out there. I got to see some of his round. I don't think I really have that much of a take on Davis. I think he's pretty much like a 5 out of 10 if I had to grade him, at least as of right now. Maybe the shots gained metrics will sway me in one direction versus the other. Today, he gained on approach. The other 3 categories left a lot to be desired. It wasn't the worst putter over there today. If we take a look at the event as a whole, it's a lot of the same, right? He gained a little bit putting over the 3 rounds and then into the positive over there on approach. My 5 out of 10 stands, right? Like I don't really have a take on him, right? I don't think he's a terrible play. I don't think he's a great play, but at -3, you're close enough to the top of the board where if you shoot a -3, -4 tomorrow, that could be a top 10 finish because of how hard the conditions are going to be. Just to give you guys an idea of what that would look like you had Danny Walker, for example, shoot -6 and go from the cut line up there to T8. Right, somebody starting at -30, right, or T30, right, doesn't have to go out there and do nearly as much. Right, somebody that was T65, they go over there and get into the top 10. So you're thinking these guys, if they shoot -3, -4 tomorrow, you could say that about JT. You could say that about like a Lauer, Jesper Svensson, even an Aaron Rye over here at -2. Any of these sort of players go out there and have themselves a day, right, an optimal performance, and they're going to get some of those placement points as well. So, I prefer maybe players like a JT a little bit more, maybe even a Jesper Svensson or an Aaron Rye because of some of their form. But yeah, Davis Riley's a super cheap guy that you could get to. He said early finish better for sure, especially for me driving home. That's sure. What the hell is this guy saying? He said ass cheese supreme. Okay, dude. Don't know what that means, honestly. Maybe you're having one on a Saturday. Who knows? He said, don't know if I've seen the whole locations yet, but it feels like over on strokes is something to lean on. Yeah, we're going to go through the pin locations here together, but they look pretty hard for tomorrow for sure. Haven't bet anything over here for PGA quite yet, so we'll be looking through the boards for the first time together. He said, that you mentioned Corey Connors was a shitty putter, and that's when I jumped on him on Showdown. He shot -6. Picked up on those things over the years. He is a shitty putter most times, right? I don't think that's a hot take, right? And you claiming that you played him because they said he's a shitty putter and went out there and smashed is just complete coincidence. So I guess congrats, Jimmy. You can go out there and make that a part of your process. But if you think that sort of random shit is going to make you a long-term winning player, then you're an absolute donkey dick. You can go ahead and play me in single entries all you want. We can play head-to-heads. We can play 50-50s out there versus you and a couple of your goons if you want to over in contest. I'm sure I'll rinse you for all your money. So let's go ahead and do that if you want to take that approach to being a dick down there in chat, which, by the way, you're banned. So you can't even comment anymore down there. I'll just send you on your way, dude, if you're going to be that negative sort of personality. But here's what we got with the conditions. Now that we got the asshole how to chat and he can't even tail the slips for tomorrow, conditions are going to be tough, right? It's going to be high winds pretty much the entire day. And going through some of these pin locations, I think these stat averages from round number 3 are going to get maybe a little bit harder out there tomorrow, but they're going to be pretty useful, I would say. I think the birdie average is probably going to stay about the same. Bogey average based on some of these harder pins might go up to like 4.5, 5 per round. But in general, something around like a 2.5 over par scoring average is what I would be expecting. And your fairway and green regulation rates also probably aren't going to change very much. So going over here to these pin locations, we'll go through them real quickly here. Hole number 1 isn't that difficult. It is a medium length par 4. I would say that out of the 4 pins that you have at hole 1, it might actually be the easiest that you have of all those holes. Hole 2, though, that par 5 in the back left corner, that one's a little bit trickier than what you had for the first few days. Hole 3 is that par 3 on that back left corner. That is going to be a very difficult pin. Hole 4 is a short par 4, but if you don't hit the fairway at 4, that pin location becomes extremely dangerous out there to that front corner, really brings that water into play. Hole 5 is a difficult par 4. It's like 470 into the wind. Even though it has a front pin there, that is still going to play over par. Hole 6 is in the middle back. That is a much harder pin than what you had for today. Today was in that bottom left low area. It was a lot more accessible than what you have for tomorrow. Up there on that high spot in the top back, that is going to be, like I said, trickier than round number 3. Hole 7 is an easier pin than what you had for rounds 2 and 3, but it is going to play into the wind most likely. And kind of like today, it's still going to be a tricky hole. Hole 8's in that back right corner. Today, it was in the middle left corner, about where my cursor is right now. Over here in the back right corner, I would say maybe play slightly harder just because it's a longer shot and a little bit more protected by those back bunkers. Hole 9's over here on this left side. This is, of course, a par 5. If it plays to the same wind direction, which, speaking of, I guess let's check on it. Looks like it's pretty close to the same wind direction. Hole 9 actually might even play a little bit more downwind with the sort of wind direction that we have for tomorrow. So scoring-wise, I actually don't think it'll change very much just because you'll have that wind at your back more. But the pin location is a lot trickier than what you had for today. Hole 10, kind of like hole 1, that doesn't look all that difficult. So if you're starting on hole 1 or hole 10, it does look like you're going to have one of the easier pin locations of the day out there at your disposal. Hole 11, though, right, just like hole 2, which is also a par 5, 11's a really tough pin over there for that par 5. So it's not like you're going to get a gimme birdie over there at your second hole, or you're going to have to earn it, whether it's on your first or your second hole at that par 5. Hole 12 is that drivable par 4 from today. Not sure if they're going to move it back once again. They might because of the wind direction, but if not, that's going to be a pretty tricky pin, I'd say, over there on that right corner. 13 is near the water. That's a par 3. That is the hardest pin by far, especially because it's only 4 paces from the left that you could possibly have there. 14 is one of the hardest holes on the course. It's about 490 yards into the wind. It's an easier pin, though. Today it was in that back left corner, so it was a lot trickier than what you have for tomorrow. But this is the minority, right? We don't have a whole lot of pins that are going to be easier. Like, 110 kind of stick out. Also 14 over here. The rest all seem to be a little bit more difficult. 15's over here on the left side. That's a medium length par 4. I would say a little bit harder than today just because it is tucked towards that bunker. 16's the par 5. It's the infamous one right next to 17. 4 paces from the right. Middle pin location is typically where they put it for Sundays. What I'll say, though, about this pin is that you can make eagles there. Because there's enough room between the front of the green and this pin, you can run it up to like 5-6 feet. Unfortunately, though, because it is tucked towards that water, you're going to see more guys make double or even bogeys because of that water aspect. 17 is that back right pin. It is the traditional pin location that we get for 17. While this might look extremely difficult out there with the wind, it is going to be a tailwind, right? Wind is coming from behind, so it's not completely impossible. So if this was playing into the wind, right, I might think this plays like a whole stroke over par out there for that sort of pin location. But, with it being a tailwind, I think it's a little bit more manageable. And then same thing with 18. 18 runs the same direction. It's in that back left corner. And it's kind of similar to today. It wasn't quite over there towards that left side. It was 4 paces from the right side, actually, over there in that back right corner. So it's a little bit closer to that back left bunker. And I'd say in general, it's a harder pocket of the green. This back right corner, you've got some fairway over here, which if you missed to the back right, it was a pretty simple up and down. Some guys still flubbed it. I watched Robert McIntyre hit a great chip over there, 18, and then fail to make the putt from about 5-6 feet. But this pin location towards the left side where you've got that bunker, then, it's a little bit of a trickier up and down closer to that side. I think you're going to see a harder scoring rate over there at 18. So in general, going through these pin locations, they look like you'd expect, right? You got a lot of water in play, like holes 4, 13, 16, 17, 18, right? Really all bring that water into play. But even some of these other holes, right, also have that aspect going on. So I would say that the scoring averages, like I mentioned before, are probably getting a little bit harder than what you had for today. So birdie average, maybe close to 3 per round rather than 3.1. And then bogey average, maybe close to 4.5 or 4.6 per round over there for tomorrow. Now, winds could really change that. It does look like it's going to be pretty nasty. So I would say that maybe it's even a little bit harder than what we just said. So, if it was going to play to maybe a +2.5 or +3 scoring average instead of this like 0.2, 2 over par, maybe like 2.25 over par, like you might get if we have these changes, it might be just a little bit harder than that, I'd say, if you're going to err on one side versus the other. In terms of your fairways, greens, fairway average, I would not expect to move very much. Your green average, just like some of these other ones, might go slightly down, I'd say, just because the winds are a little bit more consistent than what we had over there for round number 3. I think it'll probably be closer to a 10 per round average that we have out there for the field. So not sure if we even have props over there in prize picks over there for greens regulation or fairways quite yet. But I always like to do the deep dive over there on that side just to give you guys, of course, all the insight into course conditions. Live ended up just going out there and locking. So unfortunately, I can't give you guys the live props I went out there and already entered. Those, of course, over there in Singapore. Hopefully we can cash out on that. But yeah, this will be for PGA going forward. So let me catch on chat, see what's going on. Where are we at? Yeah, see ya, Jimmy, says Manny. Dude, I don't know what it is with people. Like, people just don't have a life to go out there and like hate on other people's channels. Like, whatever. People are just gonna do their thing, I guess. So thoughts on Billy Ho over 73.5. You said losing a lot on approach, which is normally what I like to see when I'm going out there and fading somebody, and then doing it with the putter. I haven't fully deep dived the board, right? So I can't say like whether I would take it or not quite yet. But if what you're saying is true, then, it's going to be hard to pass this up. And that's exactly what we have here, right? Over here in the shots gained metrics. These are the averages over the first 3 rounds, right? Gaining close to 2 strokes per round putting. That is very unsustainable if I've ever seen that before. And then losing out there on approach play, like you said. So yeah, it's 73.5 strokes. He doesn't have the latest tee time. If he had been going off in the last, let's say, like half-hour tee times, I might like him a little bit more. But I mean, it's 3 sums off both tees, right? We're not talking about having any sort of really weather edge to go out there and lean into. And yeah, there's the Billy Ho one here. Let me see if he has any odds to compare to, because, if he's like any sort of odds towards the over, I mean, like he's minus 120, I guess, over there in DraftKings. Let me see what he is here in FanDuel if he has a line to compare to. Let's see, and he's minus 110 over there towards the over. I guess I said if there's any juice at all, right, I'd go out there and take that over. There's like 5 to 10% at juice over there in either direction. So I'm okay with it, I'd say. I think that's a decent lean, I'd say. It's probably like a 7 out of 10 lean over there towards the over. I'm not 100% sure if we're going to enter it quite yet, because I might find better value on the board. I haven't had a chance to go through it quite yet, so we'll do it here in a second. You see, Cantlay plotting another absolutely toothless top 5. Yeah, kind of like Rory, right? The backdoor top 5s are always very consistent, and Joseph echoes that statement. He said Glover can stripe the ball low, which is key. Same thing with Minwoo Lee, who I thought was actually going to play okay today. Luckily, didn't have any money invested behind him, but he's got that low ball flight too, so maybe he's a bounce back candidate. He said he kind of like taking Bud Cauley worse than 5.5 finishing position. He said thoughts on the finishing stuff over at Underdog. So I don't have all the odds up in front of me. Let me see if I can bring it up, because I guess I'll just say I was banned from Underdog on like a bunch of accounts that I have access to. So it's not something that I've been playing as much. I don't know if it'll let me log in or not just to look at the board. So let me see if I can. If I can, I absolutely will. It looks like it can. Okay. So yeah, let's take a look at it together. Why not? I'm not going to be entering anything on Underdog, obviously, but I can give you my take on it, of course. So you were looking at who in particular? You were looking at Bud Cauley. So let's see. So he's obviously starting at the top. We know that, but he's a very unproven player. He's got a +2 projection over here on these prop sites. And the worst over there for his tournament position, I'm going to be 1.14x. Let me see how realistic that is. So for him to finish outside the top 5, he probably has to shoot +3, I'd say. Because if he shoots, he's -8, you figure Rory, Corey Connors, Akshay, at least 1 or 2 of those guys, right, are going under par. At least even par, you'd probably think, for at least 2 of those 3 there. And then you've got all these guys at -7, right, that could shoot like -2 and go out there and pass them up. For the 1.14x payout, I don't hate that, right? Especially if you go out there and enter that with something that you can get another multiplier on. Maybe find like a 4 or 5x payout out there for a 2x. Yeah, I see the thought process. And obviously with Bud Cauley, you're fading the nerves. If you're going out there and playing a fade against him, Billy Horschel, right, it's not really the nerves. We're going out there with that fade. Before, it was more so like the shots gained metrics that we were going through. But yeah, Bud Cauley, you could definitely play for that. Cauley over 74, I almost like the finishing position one just a little bit more, because if he's going to go over 74, right, shoot 75 strokes, it's +3. That's kind of what we were talking about with what he has to do to cash another bet. I might go with what Jay Habs was saying there. Would be sick for Bud to win. It would, dude. It's been a while for him, huh? It's been like 10 years since he's been in this kind of position. You said Colin over 72. So to shoot +1 or worse. Let me see what he is over here in Underdog. Probably the same line. They do a whole lot of copy and pasting when it comes to those other sites. Actually, an Underdog is there at 71.5. Even with this 0.92x multiplier, I mean, if you have a positive stance play that you like, or maybe you want to go with like Bud Cauley over here with this worse at 1.14x, that could be a way to go out there and play that sort of fade. What I'll say about Colin, though, is that he lost mostly out there with the short game today. So I don't know if he's the best person to pick on, because if you take a look at the round 3 stats, he was really good on approach. He still gained off the tee, but lost over 5.5 strokes, or nearly 5.5 strokes out there with the team with the 2 short game category. So yeah, I don't think he's my favorite fade, but you could. If you're going to do it over there on that site. Doc says, Bud Cauley birthday narrative, plus he only has 6 more starts to earn his card. It's a good point. I didn't think about that. Good point. I didn't know it was his birthday. That's for sure. But the tour card stuff makes a whole lot of sense. Any outright feel like Scotty like last year? Oh, good question, right? And thank you for reminding me of last year. That was some crazy shit that we had going on. Not really, man. Like I had a really big gut feeling last year, right? And him going out there and moving up the board, starting at -5. I mean, he's just not going to do it. Starting from 7 strokes back. I would say though, if I'm looking at this leaderboard and I'm trying to pick somebody to go out there and make a move, I mean, I hate to say Rory, but it is. I mean, he's by far the best player that we have up here towards the top end of the board. And Rory has shown us here in 2025 that he's good out there on Sundays. I mean, he's proven us, especially over there at Pebble Beach, right? He was by far the best player in the field over there on Sunday. As a chaser, you won't have that same sort of pressure on him, that same sort of nerves like he'd have as going out there and being a leader. It's probably Rory, but I don't think the odds are too great. In fact, let's just take a look at the DraftKings board so I can see what the outright odds would even be. It's not worth betting, I'd imagine. Yeah, he's only plus 600. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't bet it, but it's probably Rory McIlroy that goes out there and at least gets into the picture. He's just the best player that we have up top, and that's usually what I default to. Same wind direction. It's really close to the same wind direction. It was a little bit more like northwesterly. Sorry, not westerly. It was going to the northwest, okay? If you say westerly, by the way, that means it's coming from that direction. So that's why I had to catch myself there. But yeah, it was a little bit more towards the northwest over there for today. So it's more northerly. Sorry, it's more to the north. You can see over there for tomorrow rather than northwest. But very close. It's not that far off. It's maybe like 20 degrees off, I'd say, over there from northwest over there to north. So it's fun a few props to enter. So we already have this Billy Ho one as a potential play. We only have 10 minutes before I got to get out of here. So let's go ahead and cut to the chops, and figure out what we're going to do. They do have these lines down here at like 3.5 birdies. And they've got some legit players on here at 3.5 birdies. So I was kind of eyeing these up before. And what I saw over here with some of these sportsbook lines is that there's slight plus EV value out here in certain spots. So like just to show you this, if we go over here to the birdie or better board, like Tommy Fleetwood, for example, right? He's -140 over there towards the over. So if we wanted to take somebody like a Tommy Fleetwood over, right? A good windy condition sort of player to go out there and take an over, we could balance out the payout on like a 2x card. Maybe we make it a 3 or 4 man card, go out there and kind of counterbalance it. But I think if you're going to take positive stance plays, you need to be taking them over here for birdies, because with all those bogeys out there, doubles, especially with all that water in play out here with the pin locations, that I would not want to be taking these unders. Like, sure, some guys are going to shoot 1 over par, right? Even par, and go unders these sort of lines. But it's just going to be like 20, 30% of the field that goes out there and actually gets that done. Whereas these birdie lines, I think especially with some of your elite tier players, I think it could be a 50-50 coin flip, if not slightly closer to like 55 or 60% for the over. The reason why I say that is though the birdie average was about 3.1 per round today, you take a look at some of the top end of the field, and these guys were going well over 4 birdies. I mean, look at this here, right? He had, 5 on the day over there with JJ Spawn. Bud Cauley had like 7 on the day. Now, he had one of the best rounds out of anyone. But even a Lucas Glover that only shot -1, right? He had 5 birdies or better. Alex Smalley, he had 3 birdies or better. So I guess he would have been one of the only guys to go under, right, up top. But guys like Rory, right, he went under over there with only 3 birdies on the round. But even the guys that went under, right, it was like 2-3 birdies that they went out there and made. So this 3.5 birdie line, I just think it's a little bit safer than maybe what you have in some of those other spots. Whereas, I'm not afraid at all to go out there and fade some of these guys on strokes with the kind of conditions that we know are coming up. So let me see what else we have posted. I'm looking for guys that are maybe luck sacking it with the putter, as what we had there with a Billy Horschel. None of them really stick out. Like maybe you fade a Ricky Fowler after his really piss poor performance, just kind of hoping that he doesn't get it figured out overnight. Or also Henley's at 72.5. Let's look at that one. He feels like he might be a little bit low for how he's playing right now. And interestingly enough, he's actually -130 for the under. So I guess a good thing that we went out there and double checked that. Now let's see what they have for Tommy Fleetwood here in DraftKings. So they do have these lines over here in DraftKings now, which is not always the case. So he's -130 for his over in DraftKings, right? Like I said, -140 over there for the Caesars William Hill line. Feel good about that one. It's just do we want to make this a 3 or 4-man card? I was kind of hoping that Henley might be juiced towards the over or something like that so that we can go out there and find some value. But let's look at Xander. I'm guessing he doesn't have a line posted, huh? Actually, he does. Actually, that's a birdie line. Let's go over here and find his round score. So he's minus 130 for the under as well, which I honestly don't get. You can't have Xander Schauffele and Russell Henley at the same projection. Xander Schauffele is just a much better player than what you have over there with Russell Henley. So even with that minus 130 juice, I've got to say I'd still be considering that over because I don't agree with that juice that you have there in Russell Henley. Looking at a few of the other players that we have available, you've got Cantley at 72.5, same thing with Sepp Straka. I do think that they both set up pretty well, though, especially Straka over there for Sunday. I'm expecting a little bit of a bounce back from him when it comes to his scoring. Yeah, so my favorite strokes fade is probably this Billy Ho one, who somebody pointed out in chat right away. So I think that's a really sharp take over there with that fade that you pointed out. And then, to find a pairing, I guess the Tommy Fleetwood one is the one that I'm a little bit more sketched out about. And it's all conditions based, right? With all the wins that they're expecting, it makes it a little bit tougher to want to go out there and take that sort of prop. I guess just before we go out there and lock it in, let's see if there's anyone else on the board that's a better value for the over. And I'm not sure if they had a Keegan one up. Let's see. It doesn't look like, actually they do. They do have a Keegan Bradley prop posted who is minus 145 for the over here on DraftKings. So maybe he's a slightly better person they go out there and mix in, but let's do some more comparisons. So they've got a Willie Z one. He's only minus 120. There's the Tommy Fleetwood prop that we've already mentioned. Let's see. Lowry's minus 130. So maybe we add him into contention over there for tomorrow. And yeah, a lot of the guys that are like minus 150, minus 160, right, are off the board like you probably would have expected, right? They're not going to hang that sort of line when you have that plus EV value over there compared to books. So yeah, kind of going through them, these would be the best three, at least are the ones that actually have lines to compare to. Now, some of these other players are elite tier birdie makers, so they might also be pretty decent values towards the over. But let me zoom out here so that we can all see these four props together. These are the four that I'm considering right now. And I guess if we're going to choose between these three, let's go to the shots gained metrics. Right? I already know that I like this Billy Ho one with him luck stacking it with the putter. Let's see which one of these three players, Keegan, Tommy Fleetwood, or Shane Lowry, are doing it the most sustainably this week. So let's go to Fleetwood first, who over his 3 rounds is gaining across all 4 categories. That's going to be tough to beat out there being so consistent across the board. Lowry has been losing a little bit with the putter, but he's been really sharp over there on approach. And then Keegan, the last one, is gaining in 3 of the 4 categories. So obviously, Fleetwood has the best form, right? He's towards the top end of the board out of those 3. He would probably be my favorite, especially with them going off of threesomes off of both sides, right? It's not like normally where these leaders are going off later and have the harder conditions. Like that was the case today, right? If we go back to these averages over here on Data Golf, afternoon wave was like 1.4, 1.5 shots harder than what you had in the morning. It's not going to be that way tomorrow, right? We have threesomes off of both tees. There's just no way that you're going to have that sort of spread. That's why I kind of want to go to a Tommy Fleetwood here because he's playing the best golf out of the 3, right? He's the closest towards the top end of the leaderboard, whereas Billy Horschel really started to struggle out there in round number 3. And just to show you the stats out there for Billy Ho today, I mean, it was his worst round by far, as you would probably imagine over there with his score today. But let's go to the shots gained tab so I can show you an actual stat profile of how it bared out. So he lost in every category but the putter. I mean, he still shot +5. Horrible stuff, right? But every category around the green, 1.5, almost lost 2 strokes over there on approach and off the tee. That's why I feel so comfortable about that. So that'll be the first slip that we take over here on the prize pick side over here for PGA. So we're going to go with a $75 slip there. It is 3X because we have the fade and the positive stance play mixed in. But let's try and find something over there in Underdog as well. And I think we're going to go with J Habs there. We're going to take this Bud Colley worse than 5.5 finishing position, which there's a reason why, right? We have a boosted payout there, but I don't think I'm necessarily against it. Let me see if we can find something else to mix it in with, though. And the birdie lines are sometimes my favorite to go to because you can find a positive multiplier there as well. So we have a question about Benny Ann over 73.5. I like the Billy Horschel one just a little bit more because the shots gained metrics really lean into it. But if you take a look at Benny Ann's stats, they're also not that impressive. It's just that the short game has been his issue, right? He's about neutral actually over the 4 rounds, But today, right, it was the short game that held him back. So I could see a little bit of regression for him tomorrow, getting the ball a little bit more efficiently into the hole, which is, I guess, the holdback, right? Because from tee to green out there, especially off the tee and approach, he was pretty solid out there today. But you said Benny Ann over 3.5 birdies. I think there's better players that you could take for an over at 3.5, but I don't think that's a terrible take. And let's see what he is on DraftKings. If they have a line posted for Benny, so he's minus 135 under. I might stay away from that just because he's juiced in the other direction. You said Thagala for the over 73.5. Let's double check that one as well. They have a lot of these guys posted, which is nice, by the way, in terms of having actual odds up. So he's about even money at 73.5, but with conditions and pins looking really tough, I'm not against that sort of over. I would lean on the over for sure out there at that sort of number. I just don't know if I'd say it's massive value because Thagala's actually looked pretty good this week, at least outside of today. At the +5 was not great, mostly off the tee that ended up hurting him there. But round 2, he was pretty solid, especially out there off the tee. Round number 1, he gained to the 2 ball striking categories. I just don't feel like he's that far off. So, yeah, I would lean on the over, though, for sure. Who's my sleeper pick for DFS? That's a good question. So, look at my player pool, man. I'll give you somebody towards the bottom that I'm using as a sleeper play. I don't really have anyone off the top of my head that really stuck out, but sleeper play, you're looking for low ownership, right? Somebody that's a little bit of a diamond in the rough. Benny Ann, actually $7,400. I've got him at sub 3% ownership over there in DFS. He'd qualify as a diamond in the rough. And, I just said, right, that you might not want to fade him, right, because he had a decent stat profile heading into tomorrow. It's actually why I'm playing him this week. It's actually why I'm playing him out there tomorrow, is that if he can even just be a neutral over there in the 2 short game categories, it's going to be a much better day than what he had today. So, yeah, probably Benny Ann. Is it Xander over 72.5? Once again, he's also minus 130 for the under, Kim. So I might stay away from that just because it's plus EV in the other direction, or at least close to it. He said he kind of like Davis Thompson, I should say, for better than the 20.5 finishing position. Let's see, maybe that's a good pairing over here rather than going through a birdie prop. Let's see. You said what, better than, right? So that would be the 0.89x. I'm not overly enthralled just because of that multiplier. If this was a 50-50 prop, if you could enter this and this would pay out like 4x or like 3.5x or whatever, like you'd get there for the 1.14x, I'd probably take him to go out there and finish top 20. But the fact that you're getting that 0.89x multiplier just, I think, takes away some of that value there. But yeah, I do think he finishes top 20, though. I think he's got a good shot. Golf says, does Scotty have a chance? Doesn't really look like any of the final groups are going to go out there and do anything. Is like what I guess you're saying there, Golf. He's got like a 1% chance at the very most, man. But starting 7 shots back, unless everyone at the top goes out there and implodes, probably not going to get the job done. And Joseph says, thanks, bon appetit. Of course, I appreciate that, man, and best of luck out there tomorrow. But speaking of, we're going to go ahead and cut off the live stream there, guys. I've literally got to get to my dinner reservation right now. Like I said, it's at 10 p.m., so I've got 20 minutes to get out there to the restaurant. Of course, for all the exposure that I'm getting to for tomorrow, make sure to check out my Patreon page. Not only will this slip be posted over there, the live slip posted a little bit earlier tonight out there for my Patreon members, but anything I look at over there at Underdog, I'll try and find a pairing over here for Bud Collie. Also going to enter more slips over here on Prize Picks for sure, as I'm not banned over there from that site. So make sure to check it out over there on the Patreon page, as well as for all the other pieces of content that I'm doing. And that's the stat averages out there for every single event. I'm posting all the different weather forecasts out there for every event as well. So you guys can go through the deep dives and get everything figured out. So check that out if you guys haven't already. Link in the description to go out there and join. It's $15 a month to go out there and join the prop tier. And not only are you getting all the analytics, all the different weather reports that you need to go out there and make your prop bets, but also the process and the projections behind why I'm taking my plays. I don't just give you my plays and move on, just, post a slip and say, I entered this, right? I give you guys a full detailed breakdown of not only why I'm taking certain plays, but also the process it took to get there, so that not only do you know why you're playing the things that you are, right, if you're going out there and tailing, but even more importantly, to show you the process of what to look for out there in golf props, so that someday, right, you don't necessarily have to be paying for a Patreon page or a premium freedom out there from somebody else to go out there and find educated bets rather, right, than just giving you guys fish out there for just one given day, which, some people might like, right? That might be their way of content that they like, just getting spoon-fed picks. But if you're somebody that wants to catch your own fish, right, get taught how to go out there and do it yourself, that is exactly what my Patreon page is for. So, if you want to tail the bets, it's there for that as well, but also from the educational aspect there. But that's all I've got, guys. I've got to get to dinner, as I mentioned before. I appreciate all the support on the channel as per usual. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already. Also subscribe so you guys don't miss any of the content to come, including everything to come for next week's Valspar Championship, which I have to say the field's a lot better than I was expecting. And I didn't think I was going to end up going to the event, but we'll see, right? It's probably 50-50 at this stage on whether I'm going to be there in person. If so, we'll have the boots on the ground info just like this week. And until then, best of luck over there with everything that you guys are doing. I'll see you guys out there next week.